now to play.
Thank you. So yes, after Arpita, who is next? Is it Ansi? Would you like to introduce your school?
Yeah, hi everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
And this is Ansi. Okay, I have invited 3 schools. It seems to be 2 schools were on. It's Life Valley International School, Kottayam. There I can see chairman, Mr. Joseph Sebastian, and like also Mr. Gio Sebastian from director board. And the other school is GCM Schools, Punjab. I can see the chairman and
yeah, so we have our CEO, Dr. Anirudh Gupta. He just joined right now.
Yeah.
And myself. So both of us are.
Yeah, director of GCM Schools. So welcome you all and thank you for joining in time.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Dr. Ansi. Thank you for that. And we have Sonsi, who's who's engaged. Yeah, Sonsi, over to you. If you can do a quick introduction, that'll be great.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, sir. Myself, Sonsi from Kerala. I invited Badi International School from Himachal and the principal Marine Police joined. Hearty welcome, ma'am. Thank you all.
Thank you, Sonsi. So we've got the 3 associates who have invited schools here, and we also have, you would find some of us allow them in, Matt, as and when they come in.
Yes, no, we've currently, including myself, we've got 20 people on the call. So
that's fabulous. So over to you, Matt, without any further ado.
Okay, just before we start, I just want to double check everyone can hear me and see me, or hear me, most importantly, loud and clear. As we have got quite a lot of people on the call, just so there's no distractions, most grateful if you could just put yourself on mute. And if at any point anyone's got a question or wants to stop me, by all means, yell out the message in the chat. I will probably mute it. I'll try and mute everyone just so that the noise doesn't distract others as we go through that. I'm going to share a presentation with you. So Ganesh, I'd be grateful if you can give me the thumbs up that you can see it when I've shared it. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, all of you. It's a big audience, so that's great. My name's Matt Clark. I'm the Manager for Business Development with SACE International. SACE International, it's part of an organisation called the SACE Board. And the SACE Board is a government agency in South Australia who I work for. And it's the organisation that oversees, manages and develops the senior high school program for the state of South Australia. Now, over the next sort of maybe 20 minutes, but if you, as I say, if you want to stop or ask questions, please feel free. I'm going to give you a good introduction to the SACE program, share with you a little bit about what it's about, potentially how you may be able to adopt that within your school in India, share with you some of the credentials, links to universities globally, and give you a good flavour for the programme. Now, as I mentioned, the SACE, it's the official senior secondary programme for the government of South Australia. I work for the SACE board and it's a government agency, and just like A-level and IB, the SACE program is studied generally in the final 2 years of a young person's schooling. To give you a bit of the heritage for the SACE board, we've been around a long time, since the end of the 1800s, and working in the international space since 1982. Now, I'm a British national, and the program is an Australian program. But just to put your minds at ease, this isn't just about programs to pathways to Australia. The SACE program will enable pathways to universities globally. Now in Australia, it's a federated system with each state having its own senior high school program. Each program has the same value. As I say, I work for the South Australian government. So today we're talking about the SACE Australian certificate. Some of you may have heard the names of others. These are all the Australian certificates of education. As I say, each state has its own name. So there are different names, but ultimately they all have the same value and will all provide pathways to universities globally. In terms of what students get when they complete the SACE, they will get a certificate, just like they would with any other program. They will get a record of achievement. And as we are an Australian program, they would get what is known as a tertiary entrance statement, which includes an ATAR. Now, some of you may or may not be familiar with ATAR, but ATAR is a ranking system that the Australian government uses within high school education, and it ranks students along with their peers in terms of their result. So for students that get, and the ATAR has a scoring scale from 99.5 all the way down to 0. So for students that get an ATAR rank of 80, it just means they're in the top 20% of students within that year's group of graduate students. And in Australia, it's the ATAR that's used for university entry. Now, where do SACE students go? Well, they go everywhere. We're, of course, an Australian program, and we would love for your students to come to Australia. In particular, we'd like them to come to South Australia. But really, students have a choice, because the SACE program, just like the majority of other international programs, is recognised globally. Now, being Australian and the fact that the majority of the schools we're currently engaged with are in Southeast Asia and China, the majority of our students currently come through to Australia and to Malaysia. But you'll see a good proportion do progress on to universities in the UK and the US. In fact, about 45% of our students don't come to Australia. They go to universities elsewhere in the world. I included just a link just to give you an example, but the University of Oxford in the UK, it lists SACE and the other Australian certificates as a means to entry. So with the #1 university in the world accepting SACE, hopefully that will give you some confidence that universities elsewhere of other rankings will of course accept SACE in the same way. And we collect data on our students annually that shows which universities they have progressed to, which I will happily share. Just to give you some other credentials around the SACE program, because I'm well aware it is perhaps unknown to many of you, and it's not a program that's currently delivered in India. It's in the UK, it's benchmarked and equivalent to A-level. So the UK authorities that monitor equivalencies for international programs have it listed in their database as a program that's equivalent to GCE A-levels. We have written confirmation from the Canadian authorities that SACE is equivalent to the Canadian high school program. So again, progression into Canadian universities are absolutely fine. The US works a little differently to some of the other countries. So students still have to go through SAT testing and do other activities in order to get into US universities. But SACE is a valid pathway, and the record of achievement that comes with SACE is used to calculate a student's GPA average. For students looking to enter the public university system in India, we've been engaged for some time, and Ganesh and I also met when we were in India with the Association of Indian Universities, that there is already a means for students to have their Australian programs validated so that they can progress into Indian universities, and we're working with the association around getting just a standard blanket recognition in place, which should be in place a bit later on this year. There was no reason to doubt that, and they're working on a new standard procedure for that to happen. So as you can see, we're an Australian program, but to have good, strong credentials that will allow students to progress all over the world. Now, in terms of our current profile, SACE, and to give you some size, and I'm aware India is a much larger and more densely populated country than Australia, with many more schools. So with respect to the SACE board, we currently work with just over 320 schools, predominantly, of course, within South Australia, but we also work within the northern parts of Australia too. We have accredited schools in 9 countries, and around 62,500 students or so each year enroll within the SACE program. Up until recently, the majority of our schools were in Southeast Asia and China, but very recently we have accredited our first school in South Asia with the Gateway College campus in Colombo, commencing delivery of the SACE program this year. We hope and we anticipate to be bringing the first SACE program with the first accredited school in India, all being well, next year. So this just shows you where we are geographically. Now, let me touch on a bit of information about the SACE program, because, and there's quite a lot of information on this slide. SACE is quite different to other international programs, as we're not a program that's reliant on end testing or examinations for students to graduate. So let me give you a tour, if you like, of the SACE program. For students that complete it over 2 years, we break it into stages. We call stage 1 and stage 2. So in Australia, it's the Australian year 11 and year 12. But if you're comparing us in the British system, it's year 12 and 13. It's just there's a different naming convention in Australia. So for students completing the SACE program, or undertaking the SACE program, I should say, they choose 5 subjects in their first year, and they choose 5 subjects in their second year as well. So it gives them the opportunity to specialise, or for those that are perhaps unsure of what they wish to do, it gives them the flexibility to choose a number of subjects. And it's possible to create pathways for those that want to go into a more engineering field, or a business, or a health or medical field. You can create pathways within the SACE program. Now, the SACE curriculum, it's of course taught in English, so it's an English language program. And when it comes to grading and standards, the curriculum is available through our website for anyone to actually view, and students' performance and grading is based on what we call performance standards. Now, in the first year, in stage 1 of SACE, all of the students' work and activities is 100% marked within the school. So there are no external components. We work with you to ensure that the teachers are competent in the requirements for delivery of SACE and familiar with the grading systems. And we'll moderate elements of the work completed within the school to ensure that students who complete in your school have done so to the same standard, or demonstrated to the same standard as students in schools elsewhere within the world. Now, in the second year of the SACE program, our assessment, it's a mix. So 70% of the students' work is still done within the school environment. It's work that is set and marked and graded by your teachers, based on, of course, our curriculum requirements. And only 30% of the students' school year is end tested. So only 30% would go through to some form of examination or some sort of controlled activity. Now the SACE board has embraced new technology, and actually quite a number of our examinations are now done online as opposed to paper-based testing. It's still a controlled online environment, but most students and these days are more used to doing things online, so it follows suit that we've moved our assessment online too. Again, in stage 2, students' work is moderated by the SACE board to maintain quality and consistency. We have 2 intake options for schools and students undertaking SACE. There's one option, of course, which follows the Australian school year, but not everywhere else in the world follows the Australian school year. So we also have a mid-year intake, which is more in line with the Indian school year or similar to what A-levels or IB would offer. So if you wish to say start the SACE program in May or June or July, there's a mid-year intake with final assessment taking place each year, the end of March and April. The SACE program is of course suitable for traditional teaching, but it's also proved itself to be very well suited to a blended learning model. And particularly over the last 2-3 years, we've met with many, if not all, of our international schools teaching online. The SACE program has proved itself to be a robust model for working within an online environment. In terms of choice, well, there's well over 100 subjects to choose from. So, and you'll find that subject choice is similar to what you would find with any other academic board. So I will move on to the next slide, where SACE adds value and is perhaps a little different to some of the other programs. Embedded into the SACE curriculum are what we call personal capabilities. In many parts of the world, they'd be referred to as 21st century skills, or so for students completing the SACE, they would certainly develop their literacy and numeracy and ICT skills along their journey. But the real difference is how SACE can really help develop critical and creative thinking skills, really enable the ability for students to learn and transfer their knowledge into finding a particular solution or answers. Because of the way the SACE assessment is structured, it's more in line with what students would be doing when they get to university or perhaps real world scenarios. So it really sets them up to do well in these particular situations. Lots of the activities they would be involved in and would be encouraging you to facilitate involve group work. So developing social capability and personal and social skills is all part of the SACE program, and being an international program fostering intercultural understandings. There's lots of opportunities to bring culture and a student's personal circumstances and areas of interest into the learning. So you can really personalize SACE or contextualize SACE to locations in where it's being delivered. The subjects I'm not going to dwell on, but of course I can provide information and links on all of them, but this is just confirmation on the different areas that we have and the popular pathways that the majority of our schools follow. You can of course create your own, but the most popular pathways are generally engineering, business, medicine or health pathways. And for some schools, because they have really good art pathway programs, there's opportunities to create areas there. Now, I touched on earlier, but this is just visually the assessment. So in stage 1, this diagram just shows how the program is assessed. 100% school-based assessment, just following the wheel. We provide, of course, the curriculum and what needs to be delivered and the performance standards that need to be met. Teachers would then design tasks for the students to undertake, and the performance would then be assessed by teachers, and then we moderate the performance to ensure the results are consistent. When things move to the second year or stage 2, this is where you see following a similar scenario, except the final grade is just based on 70% school assessment, and then there's a 30% external component, which in most cases is an examination, but some of our subjects don't have any examinations. They're more focused around an investigation or a performance. Just to give you an example, we have a program called Business Innovation, which is all about entrepreneurship. So there's no examination component, but there is an activity which students need to develop a pitch, business plan and ideas, which is part of their final assessment. So that's an alternative to an examination approach. When, in terms of their students' final grade, it's 70% plus the 30% equals the final grade. But by the time students are sitting down for their final examination or controlled activity, they should already have a good understanding of what their final grade would be, because they have already completed 70% of the program and had results for it. So when it comes to sort of the key benefits that come out of the SACE assessment design, ultimately this type of assessment methodology values life experience. It can link into culture, and it connects students with real world problems and situations. So we're not asking with the SACE, it's not about just following and students agreeing. We very much actively encourage them to be curious, to ask, to question, to reason, to argue as part of learning the SACE program. Already mentioned, it's all about developing critical and creative thinking skills, one of the top attributes that employers often say students lack when they enter the workplace. This is all embedded into the SACE program. And again, with this type of assessment, because students are involved in multiple activities which are in the classroom, it gives plenty or ample opportunity for you as educators to feed back to students along their learning journey and guide them and nurture them so that they are all being well improve their grades along their journey. And again, because the teacher controls much of the way in which the program is assessed, it then creates opportunity for every student to learn and relearn in different ways. Of course, depending on your capacity and capabilities within the school. So why are we talking to you now about potentially an Australian program in India? Well, for Australia, Indian students are vast when it comes to university entry, and looking at Indian student movement, Australia is currently the second most popular destination for undergraduate study. We've collectively looked across the region of South Australia. Australia is one of the most popular destinations for a student's final study destination. So it makes sense and gives confidence that there should be room for an Australian program within the Indian market. Both of our respected governments are currently collaborating quite closely. There has been a free trade agreement, and both governments are working closely around the respect and mutual recognition of qualifications and pathways to create more opportunities for both Australian and Indian students in both countries. You may, just to preempt a question, what is not currently an Australian program in India? There's no particular reason other than the fact that we haven't proactively looked to establish one up until very recently. So it's only in the last sort of 12 months, and partly because there isn't a central approach, it's all down to state and state approaches. We've only just started to engage with schools in India and put in all of the groundwork to enable us to bring an Australian program. So very much look forward to your feedback and questions at the end around the program. Now, there's various added value elements for students that come into SACE program. Students can access scholarships all over the world depending on their grades, but for students that choose South Australia as a destination, we can guarantee places at our universities, and for those that achieve particular grades can access scholarships of up to 30%. COVID has been challenging and problematic for school systems all across the world. And for those very much reliant on examination models, it's been even more problematic. However, because of the SACE's style of assessment and learning throughout the pandemic, we've been able to continue to support our schools. Schools have been continually able to, students have graduated and maintained their pathways to university without hitch or issue, which I know unfortunately has not been the case for many others. For those of you interested in becoming an accredited SACE school, just like many of the other international boards, there's an accreditation process. I'm here to guide you through that process. It's quite straightforward. It involves an application, and there's a number of elements that we would check as part of becoming a SACE school. And we can look at those in detail at the time. There's quite a range of materials that we make available to you as the school to help embed the program and support teaching. There is already a whole series of video resources and workshops that we run annually. And we provide recommendations on books, and there's lots of downloadable information to support teaching and learning made available through our website. Ensuring that new schools are inducted into the SACE program well. We of course expect your teachers to be experts in the subject that they're teaching, but we want to work with them so that they ensure they're competent in the SACE methodology. So we have some specifically developed learning modules through we have an e-learning system that we would work with you to ensure that the teachers, the coordinators and the administrators are all familiar with. And we'd supplement this online learning with Zoom meetings and potentially face-to-face learning to ensure that the school becomes very familiar with the system. Last couple of slides, but just want to touch on some of the fees and costs associated with delivering SACE. Our fee structure is very transparent and very clear. We charge schools an annual program fee, and this fee covers professional learning and the licensing that we provide, the licensing of the curriculum to schools. So there's an annual fee, and these fees are in Australian dollars, not US dollars. The student fees are broken into two parts. So there's an enrolment fee per year and a student services fee. And these fees cover the marking, the moderation, any recognition of prior learning, and of course the costs associated with examinations. So we work through an agreement, and with agreements that we would arrange with each of your schools or potentially a consortium, we would agree a minimum student threshold, which will be built into our agreements with each school. And this table just gives you an example and an idea of the financial outlay that you would have responsibilities for taking on the SACE program. So just to give you an idea, we would generally work by a minimum student threshold of 20 students. So if you had that within our agreements, your minimum costs for delivering the SACE annually would be approximately 35,000 Australian dollars. So when it comes to building into your cost structure and calculating your fees for your students, these would be the fees that you'd need to take into consideration when planning and doing so. And that's my short presentation, and just to give you a flavour and an idea around the SACE curriculum. I'm very happy to share the presentation with you all through Ganesh and his team, and I'm now free to answer any questions or look at any other parts that you may wish to explore in more detail. I know I put you all onto mute, so you'll just have to unmute yourself.
Right. Just a quick note here, if you can also just outline the steps the school should take should they wish to go forward, and before they start asking questions, because I know they all have questions. So
yes,
let's get the steps or the milestones.
Okay, let me scroll up to the slide. So there are basically 4 parts to our accreditation process for schools interested in moving forward. There's of course our initial conversation, and we'd have individual conversations because we want to ensure the program is right for you, and we can create the right type of partnership together. There is an application, and that's got clear steps to follow throughout it. From the application, there is a site visit that we would do. We can do that virtually, and sometimes we may do it face-to-face if we're actually in region. And then there's the agreement that we need to form. But the one thing Ganesh is going to remind me, because I forgot to put it on the slide, is we have an expression of interest. Of course, for those of you that are interested in moving forward, we have just a simple expression of interest form that we ask you to sign as a way of making a commitment. And then we can get the ball rolling and start some individual conversations. Now, when it comes to time,
a couple of schools have actually, shared their expression of interest already, like from the group that, from today.
Yes, great. So when it comes to time frames, we can work with you on a time frame that works for you. We can work on the quickest end of the scale. We can go through a process. Usually 6 to 8 weeks is a good average for liaison, a visit, and forming an agreement. But I'd anticipate that any of you interested in delivering SACE, the earliest that you would plan to commence SACE would be next year, probably mid next year, or possibly even the year after. So our timeframes are quite fluid, and we can work with you on a time frame that works for you. So as I say, the quickest we can work through the approval is about 6 to 8 weeks. Many of our schools take a little longer. So it's all down to individual circumstances and requirements. Does that cover everything there, Ganesh?
Yes. Yeah, perfect. And then I think perhaps it's the schools to like put up their questions. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Matt, for the wonderful presentation. It was very good and clear. I have a question. May I ask a question?
Certainly, please, fire away. Yes.
Right. Thank you. So, first of all, we are already running a program in our schools, which is an American high school diploma program.
Yes.
Which I'm trying to understand the difference between the two. That program, there is no school level accreditation. That program is that we select students. It can be 20, 30 students, particularly same kind of age group, grade 11, 12. That means 17, 18 years of age kids. And we register them for this program. So they will be our students while sitting in our classrooms in this in our schools. They will be still continuing their CBSE exams and certification program. In parallel, they have some classes. It is actually credit based. And end of these 2 years, they will have CBSE certification as well as the American high school diploma. So your program, is it something similar or is it just like a Cambridge board? We will have, for example, in our school, we have multiple boards. Our schools are both CBSE and Cambridge. This would be a third board where, few students have a separate classroom standalone program, only curriculum they will be following is SACE curriculum.
Yes, it's more like the Cambridge scenario or the IB scenario. However, it's possible to create the same scenario as the as what you mentioned, because a standard scenario would be a standalone area where students are following the SACE curriculum, just like Cambridge and IB. However, with the schools that we work with in Vietnam, they're doing they do a dual diploma. So they're doing national Vietnamese curriculum and the SACE program combined, and they're doing an integrated program. If that's a desire, it's possible to set that up, and that model does work within SACE. But students would need to complete the local learning plus the SACE learning in order to gain both certifications.
Right, but I have now further questions based on your answer. For example, we go for not for the standalone program, a parallel program, but the course requirement would be the same. The expectations are the same, right? The course requirement, the number of credits, the number of courses they have to follow would be the same, remain the same, whether it is standalone or parallel, or would that vary?
This is where there's perhaps there would be additional work required your end, because all the components of the SACE would need to be met. Because our methodology is quite different to a program, say like Cambridge, which is all exam based. So the exams could be tagged on at the end, whereas with SACE, students have to do a range of projects throughout. So the teacher, you'd need to look at how you could map some of the curriculums together so that you weren't teaching the students the same thing twice. So you could alleviate some of the elements of teaching. You'd need to make sure that you demonstrated all the learning areas against the SACE to get that. Look at how you could cut out elements of duplication. But I suppose equally, if they were going to be doing, say, CS as well, you'd need to make sure you covered both the requirements for both courses so that they could do the examinations at the end of that in addition to SACE. Because potentially that could create quite a big workload for students.
That's the point.
And it's possible to spread the program out over a longer period. So maybe it's whether or not you bring in more hours or introduce the program, say in year 10 as opposed to 11, so that they've got, say, 3 years to complete it. There are a range of possibilities. There's even possibilities for students that have already completed, say, IGCSEs, or they've a year 11 equivalent. They could progress straight into stage 2 of the SACE and get a credit for the first year, so that they would only need to complete 1 year of the SACE in order to graduate. So there's a variety of areas that could be explored.
In other words, like I think, theoretically all the permutations and combinations are possible, but practically I think we'll have to sit down individually with each school to see what the priorities are. Right.
School to school, it varies the requirements and expectations.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not that I'll keep on. One more question I have. This will be the last question.
No,
So
as many as you like.
You'll be providing us with the curriculum. You will be providing us with the curriculum and framework. Teachers, and you would also provide us teacher support. teachers training, but the teaching,
Yes.
the curriculum delivery, the pedagogical delivery is on us.
100% you would be delivering the program, yes.
Right. So we will
Yeah.
be fine. Thank you.
So part of our accreditation criteria is you have to have the school and facilities, but also have qualified
Right.
teachers to deliver the program.
Right. Similar to Cambridge, I guess it's the same.
So although the assessment model is different, it's 100% the same in terms of they provide the curriculum and the final assessment, and you deliver the teaching. So the model with us is exactly the same.
All right. Thank you.
So perhaps more questions. I think you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, yes. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Just
You
lost
have
your
to
voice
unmute,
there.
ma'am. Yeah, please unmute.
Oh, unmute, madam. You are on mute mode.
Sorry. Yeah, I am from the southernmost part of India. I represent Excel group of schools. We already have IGCSE school running over here. So I heard this asking doubts about this, and it's more or less like Cambridge curriculum. In what way this SACE is unique or different from other curriculums? How do we tell the parents to take this particular curriculum instead of IGCSE?
Yeah, well, you're delivering the Cambridge curriculum, GCSE and A-level. Yeah, so any of the A-level curriculums, whether it's Cambridge or EdExcel, their methodologies 100% examination when it comes to the final assessment. The big difference in SACE is the examinations make up a very small component of SACE. So there's quite a lot of advantages when it comes to that type of model. So over the last 3 years, there has been issues when it's come to examinations with cancellations resulting from COVID. So quite a lot of governments globally, I think the Indian government included, is looking into potentially other ways of assessing students and looking at how it can be done more on a continual basis as opposed to stacking everything up to one particular day at the end of a 2-year program. So you call SACE's assessment model quite contemporary and modern. And because it's carried out continually, if the worst does happen, there is always evidence then collected along the way so that you can confidently issue certificates and maintain university places. The other advantages that come with SACE is the embedded capabilities or 21st century skills. So the feedback that we get from students entering the university system, for those that have completed SACE, they're often much better prepared because they're learning in a similar way to university. And the byproduct of that is they can go on then to achieve much better results more quickly. There are other added value elements into SACE, as I've already mentioned. Students can access, well, for those that those that get the grades can get guaranteed places into our South Australian universities together with scholarships. There are also other areas and similar areas around exemptions they can access for certain courses with some of the other elements that link into SACE. And with so many students choosing to go to Australia as their preferred destination internationally, having an Australian program with an ATAR gives them direct seamless entry into the universities as that from day one. So
I think if I may add, Matt, to that, see, I think another key advantage is that we don't discriminate in terms of the content of the program between what is delivered in Australian schools and what is delivered outside, like some other boards do.
Yes.
So effectively, a student will be getting the exact same education that they would get in Melbourne or Sydney or Adelaide for that matter. Right, that's number one.
Is the, excuse me, sir, is that the syllabus which defines that? Is that the syllabus which defines that?
Yeah.
Yes, so it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same syllabus or curriculum that is carried out in this case South Australia that would be in India. So there's no difference within the program.
And the requirements.
Yeah, the requirements.
So they are exact same. Also, the 8R, which was mentioned earlier, Australian Tertiary Admission Rank, that ranks students, on par with Australian students across all students across the world. I mean, as a matter of fact, with India included, there will be 10 countries where SACE would be delivered from next year. And a student gets to compare themselves with students across the world, wherever SACE is delivered, or wherever Australian curriculum is delivered, not just SACE. So that's a significant advantage because, they will be part of a global community, in other words, in terms of quality of their performance. And the third thing, of course, would be from a management point of view, you can look at it like, in terms of the expenses, the fee and other things. I think from my understanding, I think this would be far more affordable than perhaps an IB diploma. So affordability is also a significant advantage. And finally, you have a choice of over 100 subjects to choose from. And what is the significant advantage for Indian students would be that the teaching could be done in the Indian context, although it's a SACE curriculum, SACE requirement, SACE pedagogy, and SACE assessment, but the teaching could be very much tailor-made to the Indian context. So I don't know how much of Indian cultural elements or Indian local components can be incorporated into Cambridge and other boards at present. I don't know how much you do it. Whereas in SACE, you can absolutely do it the way you would like to do in an Indian context. And if you're from South India, you can even make it tailor-made for a South Indian context. Matt, I mean, have I missed out on anything?
Sir, another thing is like you said that both in Australia and India, we are following the same curriculum or syllabus. Then in that case, the methodology, the teaching also should be in that standard. So how do you ensure that all our teachers are up to that mark so that everybody, even in the students over India, students over Australia, receive the same level of that quality of education as per the curriculum?
Yeah. No, we do that in a number of ways. The very first step is with the accreditation. So we make sure that all schools that we engage with and all teachers that are engaged in teaching the program are qualified to the level that they need to be in order to teach in that country. So that's the first step. The second step would be that we provide training to the teachers around the SACE methodologies, the assessment methodology and grading, to ensure that they are able to facilitate and deliver against the required standard. Now we do that in a few different ways. So all schools, all teachers would have access to an online learning platform. There are specific areas for every single SACE program. So each teacher would be able to go into their own program area so that they can gain essential knowledge needed for delivery of that subject. We support them through grading. So there are practice scenarios so that the teachers can practice and become proficient and get feedback around their grading, because the teachers themselves have to grade the students' work in line with our performance capabilities. We also provide guidance around our moderation procedures because there are certain requirements teachers need to fulfill so that we can ensure that we moderate work appropriately and on time in line with other work that with other schools elsewhere globally. So we'll do, there is the online element. We'll then do online training, but actually real time. So we'll do real time sessions with the teachers. So we'll have a calendar of events. We don't currently yet have a presence in India, but the intention is once we do, we would include face-to-face learning as part of planned activities, as we do in other parts of the world where the SACE is delivered. So it's a blended approach to supporting our teachers, and this is teachers and administrators and management. Each person's got an important part to play in the process.
Thank you so much, sir. And then do we have a proper pattern or procedure of the teacher training program? Or is there any procedure for the evaluation of the teacher, like how they are doing it? Any pattern or procedure you follow?
I didn't quite grasp the start of the question. So is there a procedure for?
Teacher performance.
Procedure in the sense like monthly once, or do we have like procedure or pattern for the teacher training program and teacher observation?
There is absolutely guidance that teachers would need to follow. There are certain areas that we do bespoke as schools start. So when a school started or became accredited with us, we would do some initial induction guidance, which is bespoke to that school. But the idea, once that school was effectively onboarded, there would then be a series of activities that they would participate as part of our annual calendar of activities. All of the information that schools participate in, whether it's previous training sessions, we record a lot of these. Well, no, we record most of these, so schools would have access to previously recorded sessions, or for teachers that were unable to make a particular session, they would have access to the recording. And within our agreements with schools, one of the mandatory requirements is that schools need to ensure that their teachers are given teachers are available to participate in these sessions, because it's essential in order to get the level of learning needed.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes. Thanks a lot.
Excuse me, just it's not a question. I have another meeting at 12 noon. So I will be exiting this meeting. So for the further steps to decide, I will be in touch with ANSI, right? So then we'll have another meeting, just individually directly with my CEO also, because he was traveling, so he could not. So he exited the meeting. So we'll go through it. We will have an internal discussion and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to have an individual session with yourself so that we can discuss it just in relation to your.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, does anyone else have any questions or comments or elements they wish to clarify?
Hello, good morning. I am Joseph Sebastian from Life Valley International School, Kottayam, Kerala.
Hello.
I want to know the I want to know the infrastructure facilities required for this program. Actually, we are running a CBSE school till 12th, K to 12. What all are the facilities extra needed for this program?
The facilities aren't overbearing, so it ultimately comes down to what subjects you plan to deliver. So if you're providing you're a registered school, you have the appropriate licensing, and your building and facilities comply with all the local and legislative standards, that satisfies us that the building itself is suitable. When it comes to delivering the curriculum, if you wish to deliver science, well, you would need to have science laboratories or access to them to deliver science subjects. So it just comes down to the actual subjects. If you're delivering art, you need the right type of facilities, etc. There are some additional requirements because some of our examinations are online. We look to ensure that all of our schools we engage with have good internet connectivity. and wireless access within the school. Not to satisfy the examination component of SACE, we'd ask that you have a secure area, a safe or a secure cupboard, a cabinet that you would keep papers in. So the requirements are quite standard. And very clear. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yes. Thank you so much.
Aviation
Now, I know there's quite a bit of chatter on the line, so I'm not sure if for those that haven't got a question, maybe you could put that on mute. And then is there any questions from any of the schools or parties on the line?
Yeah. If there's any question from any of the schools, please feel free to ask. We've got a couple of associates here, and if you have questions, we can discuss. This time is for the schools and school leaders. Please, Mary Matthew, if you can hear me, please. Miss Mary Matthew, do you have a question? Please ask if you have a question. Anyone else? No.
No.
I suppose, like, if there are no questions, I suppose what we will do is we will get back to you through our associates fairly soon, leading you to the next steps. If you've not returned the EOI, we will be doing the EOI first. But again, like, if you have been contacted by Dr. Ansi, she will get back in touch with you. And schools has invited, and likewise, Sonsi will get back to the schools that she has invited. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Joseph, Sebastian, would you like to ask something? I can see that.
My doubts is cleared. We are having the CBSE with all the facilities, all the lab, everything is there. Apart from that, we need any other facilities or something like that. I think that is already cleared by Mr. Mark.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that's the facilities are quite standard. So yeah. The key, to be honest, the key thing we look at is the management of the school, to make sure the organisation is well managed and well run. The school's educational philosophy or approach, to make sure it's quite aligned with SACE, and of course having good quality teaching and qualified teachers. So different schools, of course, come with different budgets. So some facilities can be brand new and shining. Other schools have been well established and been there for many years. So infrastructure is objective. So the key thing for us is the experience, management, and the teaching.
Actually, the thing is that our school is an upcoming school. Recently started only, and we are. Mary Matthew, no for you, please. Hello.
I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah. Some chatting is going on. Yeah. Sorry. As per the CBSE norm, I think we can manage in the same campus. I think so. If it is not like that, we have to start a separate block for this thing. I think so.
Yeah, I mean, happy to look individually with you. I mean, ultimately, it comes just if there isn't capacity, of course, in your current block or school, of course, you would need to create capacity. But so we work in all sorts of scenarios where there's purpose-built facilities, or say students are integrated into the mainstream school, or there's campuses off-site. So there's all sorts of models, but it all comes down to individual circumstances. And happy to look at things individually with you and address.
Yeah, exactly. We need some more personal clarification.
Yes. I can of course look at your website. Happy to set up a call, have a chat you can, if you any worry your side, you can show me your facilities. We can do things through video conferencing to have a look.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
So
I might have one last question. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm Ashwand. I'm representing Excel Group of Schools from Trivandrum. We actually, the chairman had asked me to come participate in the meeting. But the thing is, I think it'll be a little bit more helpful if it is possible to get the presentation that you shared today. It would be a little bit more easier for us to convey to the chairman. So if possible, or if not, I totally understand. I have a couple of screenshots that I grabbed here and there, but
no, absolutely.
we'll be sharing the recording.
We can share the recording, and through Ganesh, I can make the presentation available. So you're absolutely welcome to have a copy of that.
Thank you.
So I think that's it, I suppose, Matt, for tonight. Over to you, Matt. Yeah, Ansi, is that?
Yeah, hi. And all the schools have already shared their websites. And I hope you can go through that also.
Yes, I mean, if it's possible for yourself or Ganesh, I mean, if you want to send me a list of all the people that participated, I'm happy to send an email with the presentation.
We have the details. I'm collecting the details. I'll send it to you, Matt.
We have the information.
Yeah, through you or whichever works best.
Right. Yeah.
But yes, certainly the three schools that I saw from Punjab, their facilities look very good.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, well,
thank you, Matt, for the time again. I think
yes, thank you very much for setting
have,
up.
Hopefully for your next visit, hopefully we get to visit them.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, there's only so much you can do in a week when India's such a big country and not quite as compact as some of the other areas that we work within. So no, so it'd be a pleasure to come back.
I think on behalf of iQuery and our senior associate, thank you very much for every school who participated today. And of course, all the senior associates here, thank you so much for your hard work. Matt and I have been working on this for the last 3 years almost. And it's really, really like heartening to see that we are coming closer to have, to announcing the first SACE school in India. So the question is, who is going to be that, right? And there are quite a few schools in the fray now. We've got over a dozen EOIs already. Well, it's up to the leadership now to take the lead thereafter. We are here to help you. And finally, to all other school leaders here, iQuery are the facilitating partners, not only for these conversations, but also the partnership that you will sign with the South Australian government in the future. And moving forward, we will also be partnering with each and every student that you would enroll into SACE programs. And we actually provide long-term career guidance and education guidance to those students to come to Australia in particular. So we'll be working long-term with you, looking very much forward to those many fruitful years together.
Wonderful. Well said, Ganesh. And now I wish you all now is afternoon, I think, in India, just about. So I wish you a good afternoon, and all being well, we'll speak again soon as we progress discussions.
Thank you, Matt.
Great. I'll speak to you soon, Ganesh. Thank you for putting this together.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, sir. Thank you, all the schools.
Yeah, thank you all the schools for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, sir.